Welcome back to the morning edition here on France 24. Time now for Top Story.
Hello and welcome to Top Story here on France 24. Just like anyone perhaps entering middle age, Senegal has been indulging in a bit of soul-searching. The West African state celebrated 50 years of independence from France this weekend. The party had the usual trappings of a state celebration, leaders from around the world, parades and even a giant new statue to show off. And it was marked by an announcement that Senegal would take back French military bases. The manner of that announcement has left many wondering what kind of relationship Senegal is trying to forge with a former master, all too conscious of its colonial links. And in any case, just how independent is a country whose currency is controlled from Paris? With me to take stock of these issues is Michael Kirtley, a correspondent for both Africa International and National Geographic, who's been writing about Senegal for more than 30 years. Welcome to you. That's a milestone in itself. You're not too far behind 50 years of independence for Senegal.
That's true. I started going to Africa just after independence, more or less.
Well, let's start with the announcement during those independence celebrations. The President, Abdoulaye Wade, said during those celebrations that Senegal would be taking back all French military bases. Some analysts are saying that's perhaps a deliberate slight at the French because it really wasn't in dispute anyway.
Well, I think that the Senegalese are always interested in a way to sort of, stick a poke in the eye of the French in some way or another. But I don't see this announcement as specifically directed as the French, partly because Sarkozy had already said that he was interested in divesting from a lot of the military bases throughout Africa. And Abdoulaye Wade was probably more speaking to his own population and to the African leaders that were present as well, because a big theme of Abdoulaye Wade's presidency is the United States of Africa, Pan-Africanism, and Africa taking care of itself. So to me, it was more of a posturing rather than a decision to do something that's new, because it isn't that new.
Because at the same time, in fact, he has been keen to maintain a relationship with France. I think Wade said in 2008 that, in fact, the presence of French troops didn't bother him. So is he sending mixed signals out?
It depends on who you're talking to. I don't think he's sending mixed signals to the French. For example, later this month there's going to be a huge economic summit sponsored by the French Ministère de Coopération in Ziguinchor to sort of try to develop the southern zone of Senegal called Casamance. So I don't see that there's an interest in moving away from the French, but there is, under Abdoulaye Wade, an interest in diversifying. He's reached out to America, to China, to Korea, and to the Arab world, in addition to France.
Just staying with that, Michael, talking about reducing those French troops, there's a little over 1,000 there now. I think Sarkozy himself had said by the time they pull out, or by the time those bases are closed, there'll be a few hundred there. Is that going to raise any kind of security concerns? I know Wade had said he wants to ensure the security of his people with his own troops, but the fact is the French have been there for a long, long time now. They give military know-how, and they're also there as to sort of back up, really, any kind of problems that might emerge.
Well, I think that the real question is, are the French really going to leave? I'm not convinced myself that the military presence throughout French-speaking West Africa, or Central Africa for that matter, is going to disappear. There's always going to be French technical assistance. They don't have to have a base to provide that technical assistance. So I don't see that in particular as a problem, especially since Senegal, in its 50 years of independence, has been noted as a country of stability, and a country which prides itself, and they've never had a coup d'etat there, for example.
And why is that? You mentioned that. That is quite a rare feat for a state in Africa, it has to be said, to have not had a coup d'etat in 50 years, to have had, what, to all extents and purposes, is a model democracy in some ways.
Well, I would say that that's true. I mean, Africa, I think, should feel proud of a country like Senegal that's been able to go through 50 years of independence without an overthrow of some kind or without a dictatorship in place. Why is that? I think that Senegal, first of all, it benefits from the fact that most of the population comes from a generally similar background, an ethnical background. The tribalism in Senegal is much less than it is elsewhere. Moreover, the leadership of Senegal, beginning with Senghor, who was an intellectual poet, prided itself in creating a kind of a compromise, working compromise with the population. Whereas, in a sense, they developed managers, they developed an industrial sector that tended to not be very successful. What they also developed was a sense of knowledge of self, of freedom of press, of democracy. And I think the Senegalese appreciate that.
And there is a reasonable level of political debate in Senegal as well.
If you go to Senegal, you'll see that there's always debate in Senegal. You know, I don't think that too many things are solved through the political debate in a certain sense, but one thing you note about Senegal is that people will always have something to discuss. Interestingly, in Senegal, and Abdoulaye Wade has promoted this, is the educational system there is very much oriented towards the development of managers and towards diplomats and towards economists. And so you see a very highly educated population in Senegal, human resources. And so these people are very interested in debate, but they're less interested in violence.
Let's talk a little bit about that statue as well that's been
the monument to the Renaissance.
The monument to the Renaissance. What exactly is that supposed to say about Senegal and indeed Africa?
Well, I think most of all what it says is something about Abdoulaye Wade, who supposedly was the designer of the monument. Wade's vision. I guess 50 years from now we'll be able to say, was it Wade's folly or the vision, or the vision of an artistic leader? But I think that what Wade wants to say is that in using this kind of neo-Soviet style of the monument, that in a sense Africa is rising up out of the earth and is going to have to take charge of its own future. Wade is very much about the idea that Africans should be in charge of their own future. So to me, that monument, as outlandish as it may seem to some people, may end up being a monument that inspires others throughout Africa.
Lots of people in Senegal think he could have done it on a bit less of a budget, though. It's costing, I think, more than 10 million euros.
He tried to do it in such a way that it wouldn't be costly to the Senegalese population itself by working out an arrangement with the North Koreans, who paid for it in exchange for land. And he says that the receipts that are coming in from tourism going there will go at least in part to pay off the different expenses involved. I think that, in a sense, why should Africa not have its monuments? Why should Africa be always set back simply because it's poor?
And I think Wade said in an interview as well that there was lots of unhappiness about the Eiffel Tower when that was built, and you can.
Well, there's lots of unhappiness about the pyramid at the Louvre when it was first built.
You mentioned North Korea as well, funding that statue. Is that the direction that Wade is looking towards? President Hu Jintao of China was in Senegal last year. Wade has talked about building a nuclear reactor in Senegal, potentially with Chinese investment, or certainly investment from the Far East. Is that the direction he's looking at?
I think Wade's going to always play off one country against another, as I supposedly a good leader should do, I suppose. So I think that he has invited, as many African countries have, invited the Chinese to come in and work in the investment sector there. But I think they're always going to turn back to the French at the end of the day.
And there are still many French companies in Senegal. We can't really...
and there are many French countries on the way to Senegal. I don't think that... first of all, there's the problem with migration. You know, illegal migration to France. The French are trying to figure out a way, how do you resolve these issues? And one of the ways to resolve these issues is to create a more of an economic base inside Senegal. So you really can't say that the French are not disinterested in Senegal.
Just briefly, Michael, is Senegal truly an independent country? I mentioned in my introduction its currency is controlled by Paris. Is that really a sign of a fully independent state?
Well, considering that the CFA franc, in a sense, keeps many of these countries in West Africa stable, you couldn't say that it's totally independent. On the other hand, what would it be without a stable currency? It's hard to predict.
Okay, Michael Kirtley, journalist, many thanks indeed for coming in here on Top Story. That brings to an end this edition. We're back at the same time, same place on tomorrow. Many thanks indeed for joining us.
Coming up a very short break, then Hannah Moffat will be back with all the latest news.